Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Good evening, Leslie. How are you?
Good evening, Levon. It's great to be here with you. Thank you.
Yes, and if I may introduce myself, my name is Yvonne Brewer. I'm Vice President of the State Mid-State Labor Council. And we're being hosted this evening by the Area Labor Federation, AFL-CIO. I'd like to ask you some questions this evening, Leslie, if that's okay.
Please.
Yes. Uh, why are you running for state senate?
I'm running for New York State Senate because I see that our taxes are through the roof, and yet our schools are underfunded. Our young people are leaving because there aren't jobs here when they grow up. We don't get the investment here that our bridges and highways are overdue. We don't see support for our small businesses, for our local farms here. And when I see how much we're paying in taxes, and I see that we're doing that to subsidize the folks who don't pay their fair share, and that's the people at the very tippity top, the corporate billionaires in New York, who aren't paying what the rest of us are. I think we need to get someone in there who's going to fight hard in Albany to get a fair share back for upstate New York and for the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes region that I love and that I know is a beautiful place with great opportunity, and we deserve the opportunity that has been long overdue.
That's great. How would you describe your views on organized labor?
Organized labor, the working folks who brought us weekends, who got us a minimum wage, who advanced the women's movement, the civil rights movement, who really made sure that every American at least has the dream of an opportunity to live in dignity and provide for their families and retire with dignity. That labor movement is vital to our American principles. And I'm very proud to have stood with labor over the 2-3 decades of my own career. I stand on picket lines whenever I can because I see that principle of standing up for the American worker is vital to our democratic republic.
Mm. Uh, Share your opponent's views, please.
So my opponent takes advantage of an opportunity that is allowed in New York to have a side job at a law and lobbying firm. And the law and lobbying firm that he works at the same time that he's our senator, advertised on its website that they advise employers on lawfully maintaining a union-free workplace. That's the line of work that my opponent is in. I think that is counter to the American principles of fair dealing and fair wages and safe workplaces. I don't like knowing that my elected senator, the fellow who's supposed to represent me and represent thousands of us across this district, has a side job at a firm that is in the business of busting unions.
Thank you for sharing those very important views. Uh, what from your background has led you to be a friend of labor?
I grew up with a mom who was a member of the teachers union. My brother's a firefighter now in Colorado, where I grew up. And when I was growing up, I remember riding in my little red wagon as a child, my father pulling me along as he delivered campaign literature. He'd go door to door as a good advocate. And my job sitting in my wagon at age 3 or 4 was to put together the pieces of campaign literature. And before I could even read, I knew that if I lined up the Union bug across the bottom of all those pieces of literature with all the candidates, then I would have them all facing up the right way, because that's what my dad taught me. You put the bug at the bottom, and that way you all got them facing up the right way.
That's amazing.
That was my introduction to how you make sure you knew which candidate you were supporting was you look for the bug at the bottom.
That's great. Thank you very much. Uh, what is your most pressing issue facing our members here in the Southern Tier region? What is most?
It's jobs, and it's
uh,
really high cost of living here given the tax burden that we're all under. I am a Democrat. I believe in the principles of FDR, that every single person, regardless of their background, regardless of their orientation, regardless of their gender, wherever they come from, they have a right to a dignified way of life that allows them to provide for their family. And we got there in the 1930s. We had to go through a depression to get there and to begin to start to change some of these structures that were built into the American system that disenfranchised groups of people. We started to make some progress on that in the 30s. And unfortunately, in recent decades, we've gone backwards on some of those things. And when I see, recommendations to start dismantling Social Security, for example, or to take health care away from folks, we can't tolerate that. That is un-American, and we need to make sure that we're continuing forward with the progress that we've built.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think most Americans, if they have not read the book Grapes of Wrath, it just goes into the 1930s. It really opens as an eye opener where we came from, and I agree with you where we want to go. What would be the first thing you do once you are in office?
So the very first thing I'd like to do is get the Medicaid burden off property taxpayers. New York State does this differently than any of the other 49 states. Instead of paying for Medicaid, which is supposed to be a program that helps people who can't afford to pay for health care, it's supposed to be that program. What New York State does instead is pay for that program partially by pushing the costs down to property taxpayers. And property taxes are regressive. They hit poor people harder than they hit folks with money. And by forcing the poorer counties and our property taxpayers to pick up that burden of Medicaid, we are hurting the very people that program was designed to protect. We should move that Medicaid burden, that unfunded mandate, off New York State's property taxpayers. And what that does is it makes sure that healthcare is better funded. It makes sure that the very people that are supposed to be protected under Medicaid are actually getting the benefit of that program. And it cuts people's taxes across the board, allowing job growth, allowing support for small businesses, allowing support for our local farmers. All those things are assets. I can't wrap my mind around why on earth we fund Medicaid the way we do, except for one possibility, and that is it benefits the billionaires who largely live downstate, who maybe don't want to pay what the rest of us are paying. Well, that's not fair. Everybody in this country pulls their weight, and they need to start pulling their weight too.
That's amazing. I feel the same way, and I'm very happy to hear you share those ideas moving forward. All homeowners who have heard this interview tonight, I hope they take it serious and support you in your campaign moving forward.
Well, and it's not just homeowners too, it's renters, because if your landlord has that burden, then it's going to hit you harder. And it's certainly true that any community group that doesn't have generational wealth, folks who are born into families where the parents in the families maybe weren't wealthy, it's harder to pull yourself up. You maybe can't get a loan to get a mortgage if you don't have parents who have some kind of capital who can help you with your first loan. So this huge burden, it affects homeowners, but it also affects people who might want to buy homes, who might be disenfranchised in some way, and it helps renters.
Leslie, you have a very important message. I'm going to, if you'd like to summarize in give us some things you would like to do or see.
So I want to see, an upstate tax cut now. I want to see universal health care for all of New York. I want to see our schools funded, our education funded. I want to see upstate New York get the attention that it deserves. And I'd be really honored to receive the vote of the folks who are in my district. We have election day coming up here on November 3rd. And that's exciting. It's only 7 short weeks away, less than 7 weeks away now.
Yes.
In fact, starting this weekend, you can even apply for your absentee ballot. And, if you're a person who's concerned about coronavirus and going and voting in person, then you can check that box about temporary illness and vote by mail this year. Everybody can. And so I'd be honored to have folks vote. And I also would be honored for anybody who feels like they want to support this campaign, go to my website at leslieforsenate.com, LESLIEFOR Senate.com. You can donate there. You can sign up to volunteer. We got a whole lot of phone calls we got to make to reach thousands and thousands of people across this district. And I'd be really honored to have your help because we've got a whole lot of people who are joining in to raise a voice together.
Is there anything else you'd like to ask of the general public? Let's put your ask out there for us.
So my ask is that you vote, that you support the candidates that embrace your values, and that you recognize that the people we pick this year, they're going to be making decisions for the next generation. This is maybe the most significant election of our lifetimes. We got to be heard. We've got to take our democratic republic back and make sure that voters are the loudest voices in the room. I think we can do it together.
Yes, and I thank you very much. This is great. I really appreciate you coming and sharing this evening with us, and I look forward to supporting your campaign moving forward.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to have your support.
Okay, thank you. And may I add, I've got a Local 2300. I am the president of Local 2300 in Ithaca, New York as well. So I will be rallying our members to stand behind you also.
Thank you. It's an honor.
You're welcome.